properly and seriously for many years. So start with step one. There is no shame in being a novice in something. If you want bigger arms, you have to start somewhere. Some people like me isolate their arms from day one. Some people just were lazy on arm isolation for years and years, and they have to start somewhere. So always start with step one. But if you run through the first few steps and you realize, hey, I've already done that, good for you, move on to the next steps. That is as simple as that. So for the novice stage, the step one is going to be for you to pick one movement for the biceps and one movement for the long head of the triceps. I insist on long head of the triceps. Why? Because you could also, if you wanted, that's optional, pick one movement for the lateral head of the tricep. But since these are going to be worked by presses, and I hope that you do at least one vertical and one horizontal press in your program as a novice, we can sort of be lazy on that part of the tricep for now. We will get back to that later, but for now you could. What I don't want, however, is people neglecting the long head. So I insist, pick one tricep movement that works the long head. The one about the lateral head is optional, and the bicep movement is of course obligatory as well. Only one. This is so important. Only one. Why? I'm going to explain it later, but for the most part, it's so that we don't lose you. You are a novice, you don't need Vardy yet, you don't need things to prevent obvious injuries yet, you need to pick something that you like and stick to it. I insist also on things that you liked. Do not pick a curl because it's cool and it's trendy on Instagram and everyone is doing that one, so I'll do that one. No. Pick the one that you enjoy and that you can do comfortably. This means that you have to cycle through lifts. It's perfectly okay to try different types of curls until you settle on one that you like. I'm not telling you to pick the first one. So there's going to be a sort of adaptation period at first for you to decide which lift you prefer. But once you have selected one that you like, please do stick to that movement. Now, what movement should you do? Which curl is the best? It don't matter. A curl. Pick a curl, and then for long head of the tricep, you can pick a behind the head extension. You can pick a Skullcrusher, a line tricep extension, a cable extension, whatever you prefer. As long as it works the long head, we are Gucci. If you need ideas on movements because you're a noob, check out the description. I put the tier list for bicep and tricep. All of the best movements are in S and A tier. You can take any movement that you want from there. But again, only one. And we're going to favor movements like standing dumbbell curls or lying tricep extensions that aren't as strict as pure arm isolation. What I mean by this is that we're still doing isolation, okay, don't get me wrong, we don't do compounds here, but I would want something that's not too precise. So don't do a tricep extension with cable at a 45-degree angle with a slow tempo, no. Pick me a lift that you can do with intensity that you like. We don't need to be fancy at this point, you are just starting to build the statue. The little details of the tricep and bicep can be built afterwards, but for now we want to put mass on, and for mass we want serious movements that don't need all of that precision. You don't need precision yet. That was step one. You have your movements now. You have two of them. Step two is going to be the number of sets you do. I recommend for novices in arm training 3 to 6 sets a week tops. Not less, not more. This is also very important. So you're going to do either 3 sets once a week or 6 sets in total, so 3 sets 2 times a week. Do not do 6 sets at once. It's a waste. You don't have the muscular endurance for that. So if you train 3 times a week, 3 sets on one day, 3 sets on the other day. It's not that much because again, it's only 6 for biceps, 6 for triceps. But I believe that you can grow from that. We're going to get back to it. And for the rep range, 6 to 10 or 8 to 12. Again, nothing fancy, not too high volume, not too low. I want you to do things with a proper form, so not a lot of weight. And that is enough volume. No need to do 20 or 25 reps. That's pump garbage. We want to do something that challenges us. Again, I know that some of you might come to me and tell me, NH, I've been told I need to do 12 sets or 15 sets. You have me do only 3. I cannot grow from it. Yes, you can if the sets are effective and pushed to failure. You're a novice. Your arms are literal spaghettis. They will respond to anything. Would you get marginally better gains if you did 9 sets instead of 6? Maybe, but it's so little. And on top of that, because you're a beginner, there's also a chance that you're just going to just shoot yourself in the foot. You're at a point where you don't have work capacity yet and your recovery is garbage. So we want to keep you with as low sets as possible to get as many gains as possible. Don't worry, you are going to drown in isolation sets the later down the line you get, because the additional steps that come afterwards, of course, bump up the sets. But for now, milk your newbie gains with everything that you have. Do as little as you can, because you need to keep your enthusiasm in your back pocket. That's something I'm going to repeat a lot. The key of arm isolation training to get massive arms is to keep it interesting. If you make the mistake of trying to be too fancy at first, with too much work at first, you're going to put yourself in a position where when it's time for you to bump up the volume as a tool to progress, you won't be able to because you've already done it. See what I'm trying to get here? We're starting you in slow gear because when it's time to speed up, I want the gears to be available. So that's what you're going to do. Now, I insist on the fact that you have to push those sets to failure. This is why I have you do so little. If you do 15 sets, I've seen that so many times with lifters, you're going to bullshit your way through sets because you'll think, well, I still have 3 sets later down the week. No. Here you have 3 to 6 sets for biceps and triceps. So you better push that set to absolute failure. We want to avoid what I call bro arm training, when it's a guy who does 20 sets of arm isolation a week, so 40 total for biceps and triceps, and he has no gains to show for because he's doing too much and he is doing junk volume. I also want to make clear that you should not be worrying about what I call compound interference. That's also something I see with novices. They have been told that squat, bench, and deadlift is the most important part of the program. That's not necessarily untrue, but you also have to keep in mind that your curls are not going to take away from your ability to squat, okay? So do your isolation. Don't worry about the compounds will not suffer. The only thing you have to pay attention to is to make sure that you don't double dip on a muscle. So if you are going to do chin-ups and you want to be performant, yes, opening with curls might not be a good idea. But if you do 3 sets of curls on a Wednesday, your Friday performance on chin-up is not going to be hurt, I guarantee you that. A set of curl fatigues nothing but your biceps, and that's exactly what we want, because the more we advance, the more volume we have to feed the bicep, the more sets we do, the more it could interfere with the rest of the program. But because we do isolation, it won't. It will just feed stimulus to the muscles. That's exactly what we want. That's perfect. If you choose, for example, to pick a lateral head of the tricep isolation in the program and you want to do presses plus that movement, you should put it as far away from your presses as possible, or on the same day. And that sort of contradicts what I just said. I tell you to not double dip. Double dipping is like if you don't have a choice. The best would be to do your lateral head isolation on Monday and your presses on Thursday. That way you have plenty of time to recover and you're performant for both. But let's say you can't, and the only way you can do both is on Thursday. Start with the compound and then do the isolation. And that way you don't lose performance on the compound and you still get your isolation in. The reason why I absolutely insist on you guys doing little sets is because the goal is to push progressive overload for as long as possible with minimal variations in volume and frequency. I insist on this channel, and many good bodybuilding pages also do, that progressively overloading using only weight on the bar is stupid because you are limiting your ability to grow. That is true. But I've also found that if you open up the book of progressive overload to novices and you tell them, hey, you can also do more sets, you can do more volume or reps, they tend to hyper-focus on it because they go for the pump and they do more work and they think, wow, it's cool, I do 15 sets. The issue is that they then lose sight of putting weight on the bar, which puts them in a loop. They are like in a hamster wheel where they go nowhere. And I've seen that with my own 2 eyes. People who do bro arm training for a year, they put on no size on their arms because they never actually progress. But they do a lot of exercises. It's just that it's just a circle. They never actually push forward. So to make sure that this mindset never enters your head, because it's a bad habit that is very tough to unlearn, we keep you on 3 to 6 sets per muscle. That way you cannot escape that. The only way for you to push forward and progress is weight on the bar. I'm not letting you do anything else. So again, 3 to 6 sets, 6 to 12 reps, 1 to 2 times per week. That is what you do. You are a novice. You do not need anything else. You're going to stick to these 2 steps and you're going to keep adding on weight to your exercise for as long as you can see results. I told you at the start, this is a step-by-step. Now, again, a lot of the time, when you see step-by-step, it's a guy on Instagram that it pretty much runs you through something that is supposed to take 5 weeks and then you're massive. That's nonsense. Each of this step is going to take you a lot of time. So step 1, step 2, when it's settled, you might spend 6 months to a year following that. If it keeps working, stick to it. Maybe you are a genetic freak and you can keep progressing on these 2 steps for 2 years and put on inches on your arms. If that's the case, do it. Why? We want to keep the gears in the back pocket. This is step 1 and step 2. If you can make massive results from that, imagine how much you can get from the rest. It's why I told you that I don't think that the intermediate novice stages should be based on something as arbitrary as strength or size. It should be based on progression and how we're going to utilize these statuses to push progression for the lifter. So I want to keep you a novice for as long as possible. I know it's counterintuitive because you cannot wait to not be a novice. Stay in childhood for as long as possible. Stay in dreamland for as long as possible. This is the part of the program that's the most streamlined, the easier to understand, so we want to keep you there. Once you stop progressing and you are plateauing using that method, then we are going to push you forward. That is going to be the intermediate stage. Before we move on, a note, arms are not legs. Stop trying to jump 20 pounds in your bicep curls. That is stupid. Do 2.5 pound jumps, 5 pound jumps, 10 pound jumps with a 5 on each side. That's already a lot for arms. You can, but you absolutely have to keep an eye on the rep range. If putting weight on the bar knocks you out of the rep range, you fucked up. If you did 6 to 10 on curls and now you can only get 4 because you put on weight, you fucked up. You have to go back and you have to stick to the rep range. The rep range dictates the amount of weight you put on. You always have to stay within the rep range. And also, you must never let your form degrade. As I told you, I encourage you to do something like a standing dumbbell curl because it's not as strict at first to get used to the method of arm isolation that is not super precise. So you're going to cheat a bit, but please be honest with yourself, okay? Don't start moving the 50s around and tossing them around like an asshole when you know that you can barely handle the 30s. I've been that guy. We are all men, we have egos, and we want to measure dicks in the gym. It's not a dick measuring contest. This is about growing your arms. Pick a weight that stimulates you. I don't care if it's the pink dumbbells. If you go to failure with 6 to 10 reps, you are using relevant weight, and that's the weight you should be using, period. It stops there. Now that this has been established,